You're watching MyIPS on MyINDY-TV 23, a free educational service provided by Circle City Broadcasting of Indianapolis. Here's what's coming up this hour. Get more information, special announcements, and weekly program schedules online at wishtv.com. And be sure to follow us on Facebook. Here's what's coming up next.
Hello IPS family, my name is Ike Curry and I am an SEL specialist with United Student Supports, and I am here today to go over to talk about social and emotional learning strategies that we can use while we're at home and doing our remote learning. Today's lesson is lesson 13 for our middle school students, and the lesson is titled The Role of Emotions. So how do our emotions, what role do they play in the work that we do in school, and now how do they play a role in the work we do in school at home? Very different situation we're finding ourselves in, very different reality we're finding ourselves in, and so how are we adjusting to this new reality as far as the role of emotions are concerned? To help us go through this lesson today, I brought a prop for us today. And it's something you can make at home very simply. It's just a water bottle with some warm water, 3/4 cup of warm water, some glitter and some beads, and then you fill the rest of it up after that with clear dish soap. And it makes you a wonderful clear, what I call glitter bottle. And so we're going to use this today in our lesson to help us do two things. One, I'm going to explain how we can relate it to our emotions and how it relates to our thoughts and the feelings we have based on those emotions. And we're also going to talk about use it to as a timer to help us remember to take our belly breaths as we're going through the lesson today. So let's get started. So by looking at this bottle, you can see that it's very simple to look through the bottle. You can see clearly. There's no glitter really floating around. The beads have all settled to the bottom. And this is representation of how our thoughts are when we are in a very regulated and calm state. Now, if I flip the bottle upside down, what's going to happen? You can see the beads starting to fall. You can see the glitter coming behind it slower. And everything is getting mixed up and becoming less clear and less not as what you cannot see through it as well, right? And this is representation of the thoughts we have when our brains are going through a stressful time or are dysregulated. So what I would like to do and propose that we do as these thoughts, these stressful thoughts and this glitter gets mixed up, is to set it down and let it start to calm itself. And as it calms itself, let's also calm our bodies with some deep belly breathing. What we're actually, the exact type of breathing we're going to talk about is soft belly breathing. So here's how it works. Sit up straight in your seat and take a deep breath in through your nose and say to yourself the word belly. And as you exhale, I want you to relax your abdomen, your stomach. And as you exhale out, relax your stomach and say to your word soft. Okay? I'm sorry, I said that backwards. So inhale soft, exhale belly. And what that should do is help create more clarity in your thoughts and in the things that you are to help you accomplish the goals that you have in front of you, the activity, the schoolwork, whatever it may be. And one more thing I'd like to point out is, look, in the time that we took one belly breath you can see the glitter has fallen to the bottom of the bottle. Just one belly breath, soft belly breath, can help you regulate yourself and get back on track to doing whatever it is you might be doing that your teacher has asked you to do, that your family has asked you to do, or maybe something that you're working out with your friends. All right. To move on with the rest of our lesson here, I'd like to start with a little story from when I was younger. When I was young, my brother and I tended to get in a lot of arguments, and I had a very big temper. My brother just knew exactly how to get under my skin. I can imagine some of you at home can understand this same feeling that I felt when I was younger. Well, I was feeling some very big emotions when I was about 9 years old because my brother was just driving me crazy, to be honest. And I was playing my ukulele that my grandpa had given me. And I was so angry, and my emotion was so big that I decided to throw my ukulele at my brother. And guess what? I missed. And guess what? I broke my ukulele. So, how can our emotions affect our thoughts? That's the idea behind today. What's the role of emotions that we're going to let our emotions do? What are we going to allow our emotions to help us to change our thoughts and make our thoughts what we want them to be? Our objectives today are going to be to identify why we, when I say we, I mean the students that I'm speaking with, why are our emotions especially intense at this age? What's happening in our brain that's causing a lot of our emotions to kind of go haywire, like the idea behind my story with my brother and the ukulele. And then we're going to talk about how emotions affect decision making. Again, when we're feeling these big emotions, they're going to cause us to maybe do things that we might regret. And on the other side of that, how can we make help these emotions to help us make good decisions? Because it goes both ways, right? It's not just that the emotions can help us to make bad decisions, they can also help us make good decisions. All right, so with that in mind, I'd like you to think right now, actually, I'm sorry, we got to start our breathing routine again. You can see it's all settled to the bottom. So let's again all take one deep breath together, belly breath. Just one breath and it gets you right back on track. Isn't that awesome? So with that in mind, what emotions have you felt in the last 2 days? Think about some emotions you felt, maybe with a family member, maybe with a friend, maybe because of something you saw on TV or social media. And keep in mind, I'm not asking you to think of emotions over the last 2 or 3 weeks. As we all know what's going on with our city and our state and our country and the whole world right now, there's obviously going to be a lot of emotions. So I just want you to think about maybe a couple emotions. Might be good emotions, might be unhelpful emotions in the last 2 days. So thinking about those emotions that you just came up with, think about the ones that are really intense. Think about the ones that were really big. And why do you think those emotions are really big? What about those emotions made them bigger than just any other normal emotion? So some ideas could be because it was unfair what happened to me. It was so unfair. It wasn't my fault. And somebody else did something to make me feel this big emotion. It could be that it was a new experience, similar to the experiences that we're all in right now. And so these are going to cause these big, intense emotions. With that in mind, and thinking about your big emotions, I want you to consider the idea that all emotions, intense or not, can be helpful or they can be unhelpful. It's really our choice. We get to decide what our emotion is going to do as far as actions are concerned. Now, let's take anger, for example. If anger can be a very big emotion, it causes a lot of problems in our life. But you can also help those use anger and channel that anger to come out with a very, very promising outlook on a situation. You can transform anger into something to motivate you to do really good in something, to give you that energy to to finish strong in any activity you might find yourself in, similar to the one we're maybe finding ourselves in now. So harnessing that anger and turning it into something good, helping an unhelpful emotion become helpful. I hope that's helpful for you today, and I encourage you as you go through your days. One, take some soft belly breaths, relax. Helps you make wonderful decisions. Helps change an unhelpful thought or an unhelpful emotion into a helpful emotion. And so the next week or two, I want you to consider taking deep belly breath and consider your emotions and how can you change them from being unhelpful to helpful emotions. I hope you have a great day, a great week, and I hope that you can stay safe and stay sane.
This is MyIPS on MyINDY-TV 23. Here's what's coming up next.
Hello again, my name is Ike Curry and I am an SEL specialist with the United Student Supports team, and I'm here today to continue our conversation about emotions. Last week we talked about the role of emotions, and this week we're going to talk about values and how they relate to emotions. So you might be wondering, values, what is a value? And if you think about values, that when you walk through a grocery store or a car lot, you think about how much is that car worth? How much is the value of a gallon of milk? And those are monetary values, and that's a good analogy for how I want to talk to you about different values. Values that are deeper and more meaningful to us. So some examples of this could be friendships. Someone could really value a friendship between two people. So another value could be family, and how your family values, how you value your family and your time with your family. Time is a value. People value time. People value gifts, and other people value doing things for people. So a little story about my values I can start with is my wife and I did a values inventory not too long ago, and we decided we narrowed all of our values down to about 10 values, and about half of those values we had in common, with the top 2 values actually as the same values, which is pretty cool. And those values were family, which is a pretty common value for most people. And then the first value that we hold true to ourselves is adventure. We value adventure. And so with that value in mind, it drives a lot of the decisions that we make as a family. And knowing that, and it helps guide me and root me in the decisions I make as a husband, as a father, and as an employee for the work I do with students. So keep that in mind as we're going through our lesson today about what values are and how they change or can direct the emotions that we're feeling. Okay? To get us started off, I wanted to do a quick activity called 3 Good Things. And this is an activity that you can do at home with your family, or you can do it with your friends. A lot of people like to do this activity around the dinner table. And what you do is to think about a time when you felt really disappointed, or think about a time that you were really not seeing much hope, or not having much hope, or not seeing much, having much interest in the situation, and think about what could have changed that situation to help you make it through that situation a little easier. And I would imagine what you're thinking is good thoughts, things that make you feel happy. Okay, and so that's what this activity is about. It's called 3 Good Things, and it's called that because when you're feeling discouraged or feeling disappointed or a little depressed, especially in the situations we're finding ourselves in right now, I want to encourage you to talk with everyone else about the thing that is getting you down, and then encourage everyone to think about 3 good things that you have in your life to help change that perspective from something that is difficult to something that is really important to you, like your values. All right, just like last week, I want to take a moment and take a deep breath to recenter our activity today. So I've turned the glitter bottle upside down, and you can see the glitter is moving through the bottle, which is going to be our prompt to take a soft belly breath. Again, soft belly breath is when you breathe in deep through the nose and you say the word soft. And as you exhale, you say the word belly and you relax your belly. A little more information on this is that what happens in your belly is there's this nerve called the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is connected to all your organs all the way up to your brain. And it relaxes those brains when you take these soft belly breaths, when you relax your belly. And it's like a ripple effect that has a whole chain reaction on the rest of your body. So if anybody ever says to you, hey, take a deep breath, that's exactly what's happening inside your body. So you can envision that next time. It's not just something to say. It actually has scientific reasons behind it. Let me ask you this. Has anybody ever asked you, how are you today? And what was your response? Good? Bad? All right. I want to challenge those responses today. I want you to think about the word good for a second. How are you? And you say good. Is good a feeling? I know this is a little, getting a little nitpicky here. However, it goes along with our lesson today. The same thing with the word bad. I'm feeling bad today. Can we think of different words to interchange with good and bad, to really get down to the root of what it is that we're feeling? And one way to do this is to focus our emotions back on our values. Knowing our values is key to knowing how to respond to certain situations. On the other hand, if we don't know our values very well, we don't know what's core and most important to us, which is what a value is, when something comes up that's tempting or something that's going to take us down a path we don't want to go down, it's going to be difficult to resist that. However, if we have these core values inside of us and we know that we value family and we get tempted to go somewhere we shouldn't be going, we can think about our value of family, and it's going to bring us back to center and help us make a good decision. Okay? So, it can also, for those of you that remember the lesson last week, it can also help you make decisions that are going to take you into a good direction. So a helpful decision versus an unhelpful decision. So that's why we have to focus on our values and not be taken any direction that our emotions can take us. All right, before we move on, I've noticed that our glitter and our beads have settled to the bottom of our bottle, so it's time to take another belly breath. So here we go. Everybody take a deep breath in with me and say the word soft. And as you exhale, say the word belly and relax your belly. There we go, ready to get back to it. So why is it hard to make a good decision when you're really upset? And think about something that you've done in the past, like my ukulele story, that was not a great idea. Think about something that caused you to make a decision. Think about a decision you made that was not the best decision. And think about what emotion might have lent to you making that bad decision. I'm sure you can think of a couple ideas, and usually it's easier to think of difficult situations we've been in sometimes than it is to think of all the great situations we found ourselves in. So what I'd like to do is kind of change that course a little bit so we're focusing more on the positive and less on the negative. Do you always have to do what your emotions tell you to do? That's another question I have for you. Do you think your emotions manage your decisions, or do your decisions manage your emotions? I would like to challenge you to say that your emotions are not in charge of you. In fact, your emotions aren't even, they don't have they are not who you are, right? Now feelings, the feeling of deep feelings of love and gratitude for others and things like that, that makes up our personality and who we are. However, these fleeting emotions of anger and annoyance and jealousy or these other feelings that are smaller, they're kind of like a bird flying over our head. If we don't take care of it, if we don't get rid of these little emotions or let them fly on by, they could end up making a nest and really messing things up. So these small emotions, we need to learn how to manage them by just letting them go. And how we do that is we focus on our values. Okay? What I want to encourage you to do this week is to think of your values, a value that you hold strong. It might be family, it might be friends, it might be adventure, it might be academics, it might be schoolwork, it might be getting through this situation we find ourselves in smarter and better by the end of this school year than when we started this situation. Whatever it might be, think about your value, and then I want you to write an if-then plan. An if-then plan of, if I get into this situation, if my brother annoys me, then I'll focus on my value of fill in the blank, family, adventure, whatever it is, and I won't throw the ukulele at my brother. Okay, that's just one example that I've given you. I hope that you can use a couple examples like this week, and don't forget as you go through it, it's okay. Stop, take a belly breath, think of a good decision, and then move forward. Have a great rest of your week, and I hope that you're staying safe and staying sane.
This is MyIPS on MyINDY-TV 23. Here's what's coming up next.
Hello again, my name is Ike Curry. I am an SEL specialist with United Student Supports. And I'm here today to talk about lesson 15 with middle school, to go over the lesson called Spot That Thought. Have you ever thought to yourself, that was a bad idea. I probably shouldn't have done that. Or have you ever thought about yourself, maybe that was a really good idea. That was genius. Wow. I need to think about that more often. If you're human like me, you've had both of those thoughts come through your mind at one time or another. And today we want to think more deeply about that thought that you're having. And is the thought helpful or is it unhelpful? And what's causing it to be helpful or unhelpful? So our objectives today are to recognize the difference between thoughts and emotions, as different from last week where we talked about the difference between values and our emotions. So now we're going to think about thoughts and our emotions and how they differ. And we're also going to identify unhelpful thoughts and their effect on our decision making. Before we get started, I want to do an activity just like I did the last 2 weeks, and it's called the pink bubble activity. And so what I'm going to do is I want you to imagine a disappointment or another feeling that you've had that has really gotten you down in the dumps, or something that has caused you to feel an unhelpful thought or emotion in the past. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a deep belly breath in through our nose and exhale through our mouth, all the while saying soft belly. And as the glitter starts to fall down and the beads fall with it, I want you to think of whatever that disappointing thought is, and I want you to imagine blowing it out in a bubble and watching it float away and wishing it well as it goes. Okay? Here we go. So 2 soft breaths, belly breaths, and then think of each time, whatever that disappointing thing is, it's floating away and you're wishing it well. Here we go. Okay, as you can see, our glitter has continued to fall down. Our beads are almost settled to the bottom, and with that, our disappointing thoughts have floated away. And we can now center ourselves back on the lesson at hand and focus to continue down through this lesson. So thinking about thoughts and how they can change with based on the emotions we feel and the values that we have or maybe aren't focused as much on as we need to be. Our thoughts are going to determine the outcome of situations, okay? So if our thoughts go in an unhelpful way, it's going to maybe potentially escalate a situation that wasn't supposed to be or could have been avoided if we would have changed our thoughts to more helpful thoughts. And that's the goal of our lessons today, is to recognize the difference between these thoughts and emotions and identify those unhelpful thoughts and make better decisions moving forward. All right, so we're going to talk about what thoughts are and what emotions are and what the difference is between the two. First, I want to ask you of a couple thoughts that you could think. So think about the idea, I wish I'd thought of that, or when will this end? Or I knew it, right? These kinds of thoughts also have emotions that come along with them. So you can see the emotion maybe on my face, and then you could hear the words coming out of my mouth. So the difference between thoughts and emotions are right there. You can see emotions and you can hear the thoughts. You can see emotion, you can feel emotions inside of your own, inside of you, and then you can hear the thoughts in your mind is another way to look at it. So that's the difference between thoughts and emotions. Very simple, nothing to it. With that in mind, I want to ask the question, are all thoughts helpful? Do all thoughts, are they necessary and helpful for making us, helping us make the decisions that we need to make for our lives? With that in mind, I want to read an idea to help drive the rest of our discussion. So thoughts are what we say to ourselves in our heads. Very simple. Our thoughts try to tell us what to do, but they're not always helpful or true. If you can spot your unhelpful thoughts, then you can choose to ignore them and make decisions based on your values instead. Again, coming back to the values. This was a kind of a light bulb going off in my head, thinking that it's okay to let unhelpful thoughts go. We don't have to internalize those unhelpful thoughts. We can let them go, and we can help ourselves focus on what helpful thoughts are moving forward. So again, thinking about thoughts and emotions, how do you think thoughts and emotions are connected? Do emotions come first, or do thoughts come first? And how do they relate to each other? How do they affect each other? It's very easy to let your emotions get the best of you, which could sometimes make some unhelpful decisions and thoughts based on our thoughts. And then again, sometimes our thoughts can be unhelpful, which can lead to unhelpful emotions. Which brings us all back to the one centralizing idea of our values. Our values are going to help balance those thoughts and emotions. So, to wrap up this lesson, I want to encourage you guys to think about how spotting unhelpful thoughts when they arise in your day-to-day and the situations that we find ourselves in. I want to encourage you to try to spot these unhelpful thoughts when they come up and ask yourself, do I need to think this thought, or can I just let this thought go? And what can I do to change my perception of the situation? What are my values that I can focus on to help me recenter whatever it is that I'm struggling with, and to change our decisions into a helpful decision. I hope this has been helpful for you, and I hope that you're having a great week and continuing to stay safe and stay sane.
What's going on?
I don't know.
Okay, try it now.
Yeah, that's IPS.
I think I need to call in sick.
Why? What's wrong?
My throat is sore, dizzy, runny nose.
It sounds like nasopharyngitis.
More than a dozen surprisingly specialized education models to choose from. Explore them all online. Yeah, that's IPS.
This is MyIPS on MyINDY-TV 23. Here's what's coming up next.
Hello, I'm Mr. Chambers. I'm a teacher at Edison School of the Arts in downtown Indy, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you for watching. We are covering Lesson 5. You can see up here, it's all about text summaries, which we've talked about in previous lessons. And this is in the first page of your packet, pages 20 to 22, and this is the second ELA packet. So we're going to begin with the War of the Worlds. And before we jump into the text, I'd like to just briefly recap what text summaries are. They are a retell of main characters, the setting, and the conflict of stories. You also include important events, and then of course it's really important to make sure they're objective, so no opinions, which is sometimes hard to do, but I'm confident we can do it together for these lessons. Okay, so again, page 20, and this is a great science fiction story. You maybe have heard of it because it's been made into a movie and it's a wonderful book. It's by H.G. Wells. And we will start with this read introduction that sort of sets the scene for us. So I'm going to read it because I think whenever we read something out loud, even if it's to ourselves, it helps us remember it when we're done. All right, Earth was not prepared for the Martian invasion that began in a field outside of London. Disbelief turned to horror as the Martian forces spread throughout the country. So really exciting scene, destroying everything in their path. No human weapons were able to stop their deadly attacks and superior technology. Then a sudden and surprising set of events occurred that changed everything. So we're about to get this little foreshadowing to see what's about to happen to these Martians. All right, paragraph 1. I came upon the wrecked handling machine halfway to St. John's Wood Station. And so if you haven't read the book or seen the movie, the handling machine is like a crab. It's like this giant machine the Martians built with all these legs to destroy things sort of as they take over Earth. At first, I thought a house had fallen across the road. It was only as I clambered among the ruins that I saw with a start this mechanical Samson lying with his tentacles bent and smashed and twisted among the ruins it had made. The forepart was shattered. It seemed as if it had driven blindly straight at the house and had been overwhelmed in its overthrow. It seemed to me that this might have happened by a handling machine escaping from the guidance of its Martian. I could not clamber among the ruins to see it, and the twilight was now far advanced. Paragraph 2. Wondering still more at all that I had seen, I pushed on towards Primrose Hill. Far away through a gap in the trees, I saw a second Martian. So we can tell that these Martians are sort of being defeated by Earth somehow. I saw a second Martian as motionless as the first, standing in the park towards the zoological gardens and silent. A little beyond the ruins, about the smashed handling machine, I came upon the red weed again and found the Regent's Canal, a spongy mass of dark red vegetation. So you might see this little number 1 next to red weed, and that is telling us that there's a definition and the footnote for us. If we look in the footnotes, red weed was this Martian plant that the Martians planted as they started taking over Earth. So we just have a few more paragraphs together. All right, paragraph 3. Great mounds had been heaped about the crest of the hill, making a huge redoubt, which this is also, there's a footnote for that, it's like a fortress, a huge redoubt of it. It was the final and largest place the Martians had made, and from behind these heaps there rose a thin smoke against the sky. Against the skyline, an eager dog ran and disappeared. The thought that he had flashed into my mind grew real and it grew credible. I felt no fear, only a wild, trembling exultation. As I ran up the hill towards the motionless monster, out of the hood hung lank shreds of brown at which the hungry birds pecked and tore. So I hope that you're following along your packet on page 20. We just have 2 more paragraphs, starting with paragraph 4. And you can tell already that these Martians are just, they're dying, they're dead. So they've been defeated. All right, paragraph 4. In another moment, I had scrambled up the earthen rampart, which that is just like, a hill, and stood upon its crest, and the interior of the redoubt was below me. A mighty space it was, with gigantic machines here and there within it, huge mounds of material and strange shelter places. And scattered about it, some in their overturned war machines, some in the now rigid handling machines, and dozens of them stark and silent, and laid in a row, were the Martians, dead, slain by the putrefactive and disease bacteria against which their systems were unprepared. Slain as late the red weed was being slain, slain all after man's devices had failed, by the humblest things that God in his wisdom had put forth upon this earth. So really dramatic, and we're about to find out a little bit more about this paragraph in the last part of the story, but you'll see for putrefactive, that's in our footnotes, that's kind of like a rotting. All right, paragraph 5, it's really short. 4, so it had come about, and as indeed I had many men might have foreseen, had not terror and disaster blinded our minds, these germs of disease had taken toll of humanity since life began here. But there are no bacteria on Mars, and directly these invaders arrived, directly they drank and fed our microscopic allies begin to work their overthrow. So you probably already noticed at home that this is just this result of the Martians' death is because of the disease that we're all used to and our immune systems can fight, but their immune systems had never been exposed to it. So it's pretty interesting how they died off. Okay, so let's jump into a few comprehension questions, and we won't do all of them, but I just want to help you all get started at home. So number 1, as we go through these 2, I will note, if you could take a pen or a pencil and just cross off any that we determine aren't right, and then we'll star any that maybe could be correct. So that way at the end, we're left with the great answer. And there's an answer form here at the top that you can just put your answer in once we find it. So number 1, which detail from paragraph 1 would be the least, and you can underline that, the least important included in a summary of the paragraph? Is it A, on the way to St. John's Wood Station, the narrator finds a demolished handling machine? So that seems important to me because it's a key detail, and it's a hint at what the Martians are about to experience and what they are experiencing, how they're dying. So I'm going to keep that in here. I think we could cross that out because remember we're looking for the least important. So let's cross out A. B, the machine seems to have collapsed in the middle of destroying a house. So that's also really important because these Martians are sort of losing control of their work. So I'm going to cross that out. C, the narrator believes that the wreckage might be the result of a Martian losing control of the machine. So really important insight into maybe what happened there. So let's cross that out. So we're just left with one answer, and even if you're saying to yourself, okay, that must be it, we still need to read it, because what if we made a misstep along the way? So this way we'll make sure. So D is due to the lack of light, the narrator cannot see inside the wreck. So if you remember in the story, there was this note about twilight and how the narrator couldn't see, but then the story just kept moving. So this detail really isn't important to an overall summary, which is all the key details. So I'm going to select D, and you can put it up here in your answer form for 1. All right, almost done with this lesson. Lesson or question 2, which of the following is not, you can underline that, an objective statement of events? So remember with objective, we're thinking no opinions. So we don't want anything to be subjective. So A, the narrator notices a second smashed and motionless handling machine as he continues on his way toward Primrose Hill. So that seems really factual to me, and it's just a key detail in the story. So I'm going to cross that out because that doesn't have any opinions. B, the aliens probably felt they had nothing to fear from the weak creatures of Earth. So lots of opinions in that one. They're calling this story, or this question answer option is telling us that we're weak. It's saying they probably felt. It's making an inference or a guess. So I think that could be our answer because it's not very objective. So let's star that and we'll come back to it. C, after seeing smoke behind the Martian redoubt, the narrator had a thought that caused him to run eagerly toward another immobile machine. So really all factual, so we can cross that out. And the last one, D, the remains of a Martian's body are hanging out of the hood of one of the machines. So that also is very factual. It happened in the story, so we can cross that out. And we're left with B, which has a little more of an opinion. All right, last one, 3. Which statement is the best summary of paragraph 2? So if we look at paragraph 2 just briefly, I start it here. It's really just telling us that this is a path the narrator is taking. So he's going toward Primrose Hill. he's going past the zoological gardens and the Regent's Canal, and he's seeing sort of these dead Martians or indications that they're being defeated along the way. So then, if we go back to the question, it says which statement is the best, if we underline best, the best summary of that? Well, let's look at A. As the narrator approaches Primrose Hill, he finds more signs of the dying Martians. That seems great to me because it mentions the character, the narrator, the setting, which is the Primrose Hill, and this really key event or main takeaway from the passage about that the Martians are dying. So I'm going to star that. I would star that at home. Okay, B. The narrator explores the area around the zoological gardens and the Regent's Canal. So that's helpful because that's also part of the setting, but it doesn't talk about the Martians. So let's cross that out. C, curious about the crash machine, the narrator makes his way toward Primrose Hill. So again, no mention of the Martians. I'm going to say that's definitely not a key summary, or it doesn't capture everything, so let's cross that out. And then the last one, D, 2 Martian machines have mysteriously broken down and the narrator investigates. I really like that one because it talks more about the key details, but it doesn't say anything about them dying, so it's not as effective as A. All right, so A is our answer. So now on page 22, you have more of an independent practice, and if you could wrap up the last 2 questions on your own, you'll be done with this lesson. And I'm just going to give you a quick hint about these questions. So for number 4, think about the logic and focus that we used in question 1, where we were trying to find the least important detail. And this is just an example of the packet. So if you see from question 4, it says what's the most important to include in the summary. So that's sort of flipping what we did in 1. And then number 5, I would say write 4 to 5 sentences. And you should be great at this because it really just wants a summary of what we read. So think about these underlined areas. 3 key details, the characters, and the setting. Okay, thank you so much for watching. We definitely miss you at school and really appreciate it.
This is MyIPS on MyINDY-TV 23. Here's what's coming up next.
Hi, I'm Mr. Chambers. I'm a teacher at Edison School of the Arts in downtown Indy, and thank you for watching today. Today we are going to talk about Lesson 6 for 8th grade in your second ELA packet. It is focused on reading comprehension, which is a similar theme for the packet, and really close reading. So that is a skill that we'll dive into. We learned about it in Lesson 4, and I brought it back for this lesson because I think it could be really helpful. So with close reading, and I'll just also mention, hold this up so you can see. If you have your packet in front of you, it's page 23 through 27. That's the full lesson. So for close reading, as you read, it's really pausing to summarize characters, the setting, and the important events. So you'll circle characters the first time you meet them, and we'll see that as we walk through this story. And then you'll underline key details or clues that can help us for the summary as we answer these comprehension questions after we read. And when you read aloud, usually even at home, it will help you remember typically everything that you read or a lot of the key details. So it can be an important skill. So this close read is going to be from a section of text or from a text called 5 Weeks in a Balloon. And the text is by Jules Verne, who is a famous author who lived in France in the 1800s. Maybe you have read Journey to the Center of the Earth, or all of his really interesting works. He's pretty familiar with a lot of readers. And so this was published in 1876. And you can see at the very top I circled Dr. Ferguson, who's one of our main characters, because that's what you would do with close reading. And then I also circled the other one, Richard Kennedy, who's also called the Scot. And I underlined key details. All right, so let's dive in. Paragraph 1. Dr. Ferguson had a friend, not another self, indeed, an alter ego. For friendship could not exist between 2 beings exactly alike. So that's a lot of foreshadowing. It's really the main point of this story, which is that they are these 2 great friends, but they're really different. Paragraph 2, but if they possess different qualities, aptitudes, and temperaments, Richard Kennedy, the Scot, and Samuel Ferguson, the doctor, lived with one and the same heart, and that gave them no great trouble. In fact, quite the reverse. So that's just saying that they really depend on their friendship, and they're very close. Paragraph 3, the acquaintanceship of these two friends had been formed in India when they belonged to the same regiment, maybe like a military regiment, and I underlined that key detail because that's how they met. While Richard would be out in pursuit of the tiger and the elephant, Samuel would be in search of the plants and insects. Each could call himself expert in his own province, and more than one rare botanical specimen that to science was as great as victory won as the conquest of a pair of ivory tusks became the doctor's booty. So this writing can be a little, sometimes you have to go back and think, okay, what just happened? What did the author say? And so that's always a skill too for comprehension when you just go back and reread. But basically it's just saying that while the doctor wanted to do these experiments and study, his friend Kennedy, we'll call him, would be more adventurous. So he'd be maybe out hunting for tigers and elephants. And there's a one here next to botanical, which this tells us that it's in the footnotes and it's defined there. And it really just means plants, so plant specimens. All right, paragraph 4. Since the return to England, they had been frequently separated by the doctor's distant expeditions, but on his return, the latter never failed to go, not to ask for hospitality, but to bestow some weeks of his presence at the home of his crony Richard. So basically, Kennedy is always invading the doctor's home, and I thought that was an interesting detail to underline because it shows how much they're together. All right, the Scot talked to the past, the doctor busily prepared for the future. The one looked back, the other forward, hence a relentless spirit personified in Ferguson, perfect calmness typified in Kennedy. Such was the contrast. So really it's pretty clear that they're opposites. All right, paragraph 6. After his journey to Tibet, the doctor had remained nearly 2 years without hinting at new explorations, and Richard, supposing that his friend's instinct for travel and thirst for adventure had at length died out, was perfectly enchanted. They would have ended badly someday or other, he thought to himself. No matter what experience one has with men, one does not travel always with impunity among cannibals and wild beasts. So Kennedy besought the doctor to tie up his bark for life, having done enough for science and too much for the gratitude of men. Okay, so we have impunity, which is defined here in the bottom. And it just means being free of punishment. You can see that little 2, which tells us the footnote is there. And I underline the first sentence in this paragraph because it really talks about how there's this change. The doctor isn't traveling, they're not taking these adventures, and so you know something's about to happen. It's kind of leading up to the climax of the story. So after Kennedy sort of says to the doctor, you should just give it all up, in paragraph 7, the doctor contented himself with making no reply to this. He remained absorbed in his own reflections, giving himself up to secret calculations, passing the nights among heaps of figures and making experiments with the strangest-looking machinery. Inexplicable to everybody but himself. He could readily be guessed, though, that some great thought was fermenting in his brain. So you could underline at home in your packet the whole paragraph. I thought it was pretty key. Some of that I underlined just the first sentence because the doctor just kind of doesn't say that he's giving up his adventures and then that something is about to happen, the last sentence. All right, paragraph 8. What can he have been planning, wondered Kennedy, when in the month of January his friend quitted him to return to London. He found out one morning when he looked into the Daily Telegraph. Merciful heaven, he exclaimed, the lunatic, the madman. Cross Africa in a balloon, nothing but that was wanted to cap the climax? That's when he's been bothering his wits about these 2 years past. So basically Kennedy has just discovered that his friend the doctor is plotting this adventure to take a hot air balloon across Africa. And so he's just really, sort of shocked at this moment. And so I underlined those last really 3 paragraphs because that's where that climax, that detail happens. All right, paragraph 11. On the very evening, Kennedy, half alarmed and half exasperated, took the train for London where he arrived next morning. 3/4 of an hour later, a cab deposited him at the door of the doctor's modest dwelling in Soho Square, Greek Street. Forthwith, he bounded up the steps and announced his arrival with 5 good, hearty-sounding raps at the door. So that is it's pretty clear that he is not very happy. Ferguson opened in person. "Richard, you here?" he exclaimed, but with no great expression of surprise after all. Richard himself, was the response. And what have you come to town for? To prevent the greatest piece of folly that ever was conceived, and folly is like foolishness. Folly, said the doctor. Is that what this paper says? The truth, rejoined Kennedy, holding out the copy of the Daily Telegraph mentioned above. Ah, that's what you mean, is it? These newspapers are great tattlers, but sit down, my dear Richard. No, I won't sit down. Then you really intend to attempt this journey? Most certainly, said the doctor. All my preparations are getting along finely, and where are your traps? Let me have a chance at them. I'll make them fly. I'll put your preparations in fine order. And so saying, the gallant Scot, Kennedy, gave way to a genuine explosion of wrath. And so let's remember that he was angry when it says wrath. And he really actually wanted to destroy these hot air balloon preparations, these equipment, these experiments that the doctor was putting together. All right, we're almost done. Okay, paragraph 24. Come be calm, my dear Richard, resumed the doctor. You're angry at me because I did not acquaint you with my new project. That's actually a really important paragraph, so I underlined it. We're going to talk about it in the comprehension questions that we'll do together. We'll do some of them after this, because it really says that Kennedy might be feeling a little hurt that he didn't know about this journey. He calls this his new project, Kennedy said. I have been very busy, the doctor went on, without heeding the interruption. I have had so much to look after, but rest assured that I should not have started without writing to you. Oh, indeed, I'm highly honored. So Kennedy's being very sarcastic here, where he's obviously a little hurt, because it is my intention to take you with me. Upon this, the Scotchman gave a leap that a wild goat would not have been ashamed of among his native crags. So he basically just yelled, Ah, really, then you want them to send us both to Bedlam, which is an insane asylum? I have counted positively upon you, my dear Richard, and I have picked you out from all the rest. Kennedy stood speechless with amazement. But he made up his mind to oppose his friend's departure by all means in his power, and so pretended to give in at the same time, keeping on the watch. As for the doctor, he went on diligently with his preparations. So I underlined that last part especially because it sort of gives us a window into what Kennedy is about to do, which hopefully, in his mind, is sabotage the whole adventure. Okay. Let's begin with the comprehension questions in number 17 on page 25. So if you think about it, that question really has two parts. And we're going to go ahead and eliminate answers or answer options as we go through them, and star, if you can at home, ones that maybe could be the right answer, because then at the end we'll be left with the correct one. All right, so part A, how does Richard Kennedy feel when he reads the newspaper article about Samuel Ferguson's plan? So this is what we were just talking about on the last page of the article. Is it A, he's shocked? And so that is something where I love to go back and look at where he is and just use our resource when he's looking at that article and see what it tells us he's feeling. So if we look at that section of the text, it says right here in paragraph 10, I start it here. So he found one morning when he looked into the Daily Telegraph, merciful heaven, he exclaimed, the lunatic, the madman. Cross Africa in a balloon, nothing but that was wanted to cap the climax. That's what he's been bothering his wits about these 2 years past. So then if we go back to the story, A is he's shocked, which I think we should start that, because he seems pretty shocked in that response. B is he is angry but amused. So he definitely, the story tells us that he has like a wrath later in anger. So he was angry at some points, but he was not amused as far as we could tell. So let's cross out B. C is he's nervous, and we also didn't get any indication of that. There was nothing talking about like him shaking or worrying about something. So let's cross out C. And then D, he is secretly proud. That's also not something that he mentions. In fact, the story tells us that he wants to destroy the plan, so he's definitely not proud of it. So that's the right answer is A. So then for B, it says which sentence from the story best supports that answer. So underline best, because some of these answer options could be right, but they might not be the best fit. So we want to find text evidence that helps us see that he's shocked. So is it A? Well, Richard would be out in pursuit of the tiger and the elephant. Samuel would be in search of the plants and insects. So again, Richard is the doctor, and Samuel is Kennedy is his friend. And in the gist or the summary of this statement, it just tells us their character but nothing about the fact that Kennedy was shocked. So let's cross out A. B, the Scott talked of the past, the Dr. Bisley prepared for the future. So in this one, this is also about their character. It's just something that, we don't need to worry about for this answer. So let's cross that out. C, merciful heaven, he exclaimed, the lunatic, the madman. So that's actually what we just read as a response to him reading this article about the adventure. So that could be the best support for the fact that he was shocked. And then D, oh indeed, I'm highly honored. So that was his sarcastic response to learning that he was going to be invited on this adventure. So we can cross out D, A, and B and star C, or circle C, because C is the best fit to show us that he was really shocked when he heard about it. Okay, number 18. We just have 3 more we'll do together for this lesson. So 18 says, what themes are revealed through the description and interaction of Richard Kennedy and Samuel Ferguson? And we're going to select all that apply. So we can just go ahead and circle that as we go through these, because then we know there's more than one answer, most likely. All right, A, true friends are willing to forgive past mistakes. So this could be a theme. The only problem is we didn't have enough of the passage to really see mistakes from either one of these friends. So I bet they would forgive them, but it's not in the passage, so I'm going to cross that out. B, even the closest friends face challenges in their relationship. So there are a lot of challenges in this story, and they're definitely close friends. For example, Kennedy wants to destroy this mission or adventure the Doctor is planning. They have an argument about it. So they're facing a lot of challenges. That could be a theme. Let's circle B. C, even the best friendships can fade over time. So that might happen, but it hasn't. I mean, they've stayed in touch for years, and they're still really good friends. So that's not a theme. I'm going to cross out C. D, good friends always agree about important issues. So that's very clear, as I was just mentioning, that Kennedy does not agree with the Doctor's mission. So I think that's one we can cross out. All right, just 2 more. E, friendship is more important than success. I really like this one because it's tricky. So we hear that the Doctor was in the newspaper. It talks about their careers and how they go on different adventures and prefer different things. But the main point of the story is the friendship. So I think we can circle that, because friendship is sort of this anchor of the story. It's almost more important than success. So let's circle E. And then F, close friendships can develop between very different people. So they're the opposites. Like, we learned that right away, and so we can circle F. So now we're left with B, E, and F as our answer. Okay, 2 more. Number 19. Read the dialogue in paragraph 21 through 27, and what does it reveal about Richard Kennedy? So I think this is one we're just going to quickly need to go back and look at that dialogue and use our resource of the story. So I highlighted this star, or noted this star where the dialogue starts at 21. So, no, I won't sit down. Then you really intend to attempt this journey, Kennedy says. The Doctor says, most certainly. All my preparations are getting along finely. And where are your traps? Let me have a chance at them. I'll make them fly. I'll put your preparations in fine order. In so saying, the gallant Scott, Kennedy, gave way to a genuine explosion of wrath. All right, and then it continues for a few paragraphs. Come, be calm, my dear Richard, resumed the Doctor. You're angry at me because I did not acquaint you with my new project. He calls this his new project. I've been very busy, the Doctor went on without heeding the interruption. I have had so much to look after, but rest assured that I should not have started without writing to you. Oh, indeed, I am highly honored. So his sarcasm again. All right, so I kind of hinted at this as we were reading the story, but now we need to find out, what does this say about Kennedy? So is it A, he is hurt because the Doctor didn't tell him about the plans? And so I think that was a pretty good indication. And the Doctor even says, hey, you must be hurt or upset because of that. So let's star that. That could be the right answer. B, he is outraged because he considers the trip to be dangerous. So this is tricky because we know that the Doctor, or that Kennedy feels the Doctor's trips are dangerous. He talks about that in different parts of the reading, but not in this excerpt. So I'm going to cross that out because he doesn't mention anything about danger. All right, C, he is impatient to get started on the journey. So the Doctor does not, or Kennedy does not want to go with the Doctor on the journey. So that is definitely wrong. And what about D? He is pleased that he will be included on the trip. So he doesn't tell the Doctor this, but he definitely does not want to go, and he wants to destroy the trip. He wants to sabotage it. So I'm going to cross out D, and then we're left with A, that he's hurt because the doctor didn't tell him. All right, 20 is really interesting. So it says the ancient Greek poem, the Odyssey, tells of the journey Odysseus makes to return to his home after the Trojan War and the many obstacles he faces and strange worlds he encounters. So we're going to compare that. Based on the excerpt, how is the universal theme of the journey different in 5 Weeks in a Balloon? All right, so is it A, the main character knows he must make the journey alone without help from others? So I think we can cross this out because we know the doctor wants Kennedy to come with him. He doesn't want to go alone. So I'm going to cross out A, or you can do that at home. B, the main character chooses to leave home and seek out adventure. The doctor is definitely doing that. So let's star B. C, the main character does not have a home that he can return to. So a lot of this story is set in the doctor's home, and they're in London together. So that's not true. We can cross out C. D, the main character's journey will take him to a familiar and popular place. So it sounds like, from everything we can tell, the doctor has never been to Africa, and he's never been in a hot air balloon adventure like this. So it's not very familiar to them. So I'm going to cross out D, and we're left with B. The main character chose to leave home and seek out adventure. Okay, so now in your packets, if you could finish the last question, and I'll show you. It's on page 33, sorry, page 27, and it's question 21. And so this example, this is just a print off of the packet. It asks us, compare and contrast how the differing structures of the story and the play contribute to the communication of meaning. Use details from both texts to support your responses. So I wrote, if you could write 4 to 5 sentences, I think that'd be great in your summary. And then I underlined, which you could do at home, all of these places in this excerpt from a play version of the story that give us stage direction. So for example, Samuel, the doctor, it says enthusiastic, that he's enthusiastic but not surprised. And then in the next line it says Richard, shaken, Samuel, furrowing his brow. So it's telling us what these characters should do or look like. And that is very different from what we just read, right? We don't have any of that direction. So use that in your answer, and I think it will be pretty easy to sum up. So that is the end of lesson 6. Thank you for watching, and we miss you at school.
Look around. Listen. We're moving to a new beat. A colorful symphony, each note made more beautiful by the next. We are driven by talent in the classroom, in each school, that recognizes the potential in every student and knows the opportunity to achieve is not an option, it's expected. We are not alone. We stand among giants, eager to help, eager to give back and build bonds to last generations. We are part of a city fueled by grit, strength, and determination. Racing toward a future full of potential, where hard work really does pay off. When one succeeds, we all succeed. We're innovative, we're industrious, we're imaginative. We are your Indianapolis Public Schools, and we're stronger together.
You're watching MyIPS on MyINDY-TV 23, a free educational service provided by Circle City Broadcasting of Indianapolis. Here's what's coming up this hour. Get more information, special announcements, and weekly program schedules online at wishtv.com. And be sure to follow us on Facebook. Here's what's coming up next.
Good morning. My name is Mrs. Hutchins. I'm the visual arts teacher at Harshman Magnet Middle School, and I'm here today to talk to you about Day 7 lesson, Scribble Art. So we're going to be talking about drawing something that is very abstract and very much from your own imagination. We talked about abstract last time. Abstract is a non-objective drawing, so it isn't something that you create like a landscape or a portrait. It doesn't really have a vision in mind. It can go any kind of sorts of different directions that you want it to go. So that's kind of like a very open idea of abstract. So the academic standard that we're going to be covering today is we're going to demonstrate appropriate use of our various media, techniques, processes to communicate themes and ideas in our artwork. So what that basically means is I'm going to make sure you know how to use markers and pens properly on your piece of paper to create a successful composition. So I have started a bit of an example of scribble art. So in the instructions for day 7, it asks you to just scribble using different shapes and a variety of different lines. And then after you start that, they want you to color in between the different spaces and kind of come up with this very colorful, abstract, different design. So I've already written down on the board different types of shapes. So there's 2 different categories of shapes. There's geometric and then there's organic. So geometric are your basic triangle, square, circle. Organic are shapes that you would find in nature, which you also actually do find geometric shapes in nature. But organic is basically, think of amoebas or different cells that you see under a microscope. Those would be more organic. Or the shape of a leaf. The shape of a leaf is organic because it's, and it can be symmetrical, but most of the time it's not perfectly symmetrical, so that's why it can be considered organic. Different types of lines. You have your basic straight line, curvy, zigzag, dash, and then I forgot, you have your diagonal line. I don't think that's a permanent or a dry erase marker. You have your diagonal line, which is basically your straight line at a diagonal, and you can also probably put a spiral in there as well. A spiral is also probably considered an organic shape, if you want to get into the semantics. Okay, so now that we have a variety of different types of lines and shapes that we can use in our drawing, we are going to start by thinking out our composition. We talked about what composition was last time, and the composition is basically the entire, how the piece is going to come together and what it's going to look like. That's your composition. So I've started my example. You can either have a composition that is, this is portrait. Portrait is up and down. Landscape is if you do it this way. That's if you have a rectangle artwork. If you have a square artwork, it just basically would be the direction in which the composition is going. Portrait would still be up and down. Landscape would be side to side. So I started out with using a black marker. If you are not confident in the marks that you make, please, please, please feel free to use a pencil first. So I'm going to go ahead and set this aside, and we can go ahead and start fresh on a new composition, and I can show you my process. So what I did first is I went ahead and I did the curvy line first. And the reason why I started with a curvy line is because I kind of feel like it is going to break up the space for me. So actually you can decide what you would prefer. Do you want the composition to go portrait or landscape? It doesn't matter. I chose to go portrait. I don't know why, if I like it. So I would start with your curvy line. And I start on the edge of the paper, and then I kind of bring it around, and I make these big, huge kind of loops. And then maybe I'll come back down around over here and stop it. And that would give me a nice kind of breaks up the paper. And from there, I would like to probably overlap some shapes. Overlap means you're going to lay something on top of something else. Okay, so now I'm probably going to do, maybe I'll do a square. And drawing straight lines can be kind of tricky. So again, if you're not confident in the mark that you make, go ahead and do a pencil first, and then you can go over your pencil marks with a black marker. When I make mistakes in my work, I just kind of try to incorporate my mistakes into my work. So I don't really get stressed out about mistakes. I just use them, and I kind of try to add them and make them work. So what I did is my lines weren't as straight as I would want them, so I just went ahead and made my lines a little bit thicker with my black marker, and then that way my mistake turns into part of the artwork, and I'm not that worried about it. Being an art teacher, I've noticed that sometimes that kids can get really stressed out about the littlest mistakes that they make in their artwork, and I try to motivate them to see their mistakes as just part of the process, part of the journey that we do in life. So my next shape I'll probably do up here, and I'm going to kind of have it go off the paper, and I'm going to do just like a semicircle. A lot of you learned how to do that circle in elementary school. If you learned how to draw a sun in the top of your landscape, you know, Mr. Sun was popping out up there, so I kind of did that. I like the idea of a triangle. I like triangles. I think they might be one of my favorite shapes. I'm going to put the triangle over here. He's kind of floating alone up there. We'll probably do some lines to get him incorporated more involved in the artwork. So as you do this, another really important thing to think about are your elements of art. So your elements of art are your basic things that you use to make artwork. There's 7, I believe. I would have to double check. But one of them is, well, there's principles of design too. But you want to keep things kind of centered and balanced. That's principles of design. Kind of see the rhythm or the movement of your artwork. These are all the things that you kind of want to keep in mind when you do your artwork. So the next line I'll do like a zigzag up here, kind of next to my triangle, which kind of goes up there. And then I'm going to keep going. I'm going up and down. Some of my zigzags are short. Some of my zigzags are big and tall. Kind of looks like mountains in the background. So this is interesting because hard lines will give you the feeling of like hard and edgy and kind of, you know, it's definitely not a soft vibe. So whereas your curvy lines are going to give you this nice soft flowy lines, and there's kind of now this interesting relationship that's happening in my artwork between the hard and the soft lines. So that's kind of cool. Let's see, I like spirals, so let's throw a spiral in there, and let's see where I'm going to do this. I think I'm going to have it pop up over here off the edge of my paper. And we have a circle, we have a square, we have a triangle. We can do multiple squares if you want. You can do different shapes of your, different sizes of your shapes. You don't all have to do, they don't all have to be big. They don't all have to be terribly small. As you can see, I'm left-handed, and if you are left-handed, sometimes if you're worried about getting your paper dirty because of like the marker or the crayon that you're using, you can always slide a spare piece of paper under your hand while you're working, and that prevents, you know, as you move around, that keeps like any kind of graphite or any marker that you've acquired on your hand from smudging your paper. So that's a little trick of the left-handed trade. It can also work for right-handed if you have that problem as well. It doesn't just have to go that way. So let's see, my composition still needs some things, so I'm going to keep working on that. I'm going to keep adding some shapes in my spaces till I feel like it is complete or full in the way that I want it to be. A lot of times it's a feeling. It's just feeling that it's complete or feeling that it's finished. It's also pushing yourself to maybe see different things that maybe you weren't ready to see. So some of my students would be like, this is done, this looks done to me, now I'd be ready to color, and I would probably ask them to maybe fill in some of the more emptier areas, because that's going to get, you know, that can kind of get boring. So maybe let's make it interesting with some more shapes. So I'm probably going to do maybe another triangle down here. Again, I'm overlapping because in my head I'm already thinking about if I have this line coming in between my triangle, I can probably color those 2 different colors, and that would be really interesting. Down there, and let's see, maybe another curvy line. Let's see, I'm trying to think. This is hard, I'm working in marker. I have to be intentional with my marks. So, let's do this. Oh, look, I smeared. I didn't follow my instructions. So, if you smear, what we'll do is we can see if the color, what I would do is I would pick a dark color to go in that area to kind of help cover that smear. I threw another curvy line in there. It's kind of starting to have like an 80s vibe. Let's see, a decade's 80s is what I was referencing to. Some good abstract artists to look at if you want to look up some artists that this kind of reminds me of. Wiesel Kandinsky, I can write that on the board for you, would be great. He's one of my favorites. So artists to reference. Wiesel, let me think, is it W or V? I think it's a V. Oh, my N is a funny N. And then Pablo Picasso did some abstract pieces. We all know Pablo Picasso. I'm sure there's a lot of different abstract artists you could look up if you just type in abstract artists. Let me think. Alma Thomas is a good one, but she didn't do a lot of overlapping. She just did more color block shapes, but she would be a good one to look up as well. Okay, let's go ahead and start adding some color. So what I would do, I didn't have, since we are at home during this pandemic, what was available to me was not what I would normally have in my art classroom. So I was only able to grab some markers. I would probably prefer you use crayon or colored pencil to fill in the bigger spaces, and the reason why is because it adds like a nice background, more muted color versus marker being big and bold. I would save your markers for the smaller pieces or the pieces that you would want to stand out the most. So I'm going to go ahead and grab some of these kind of broader, wider markers, and that way I'm covering more area with the tip, and it's not going to take me as long, but it's not going to get monotonous, and I'm not going to get kind of bored really quickly with filling in these areas. And I think I'm going to fill in this space right here. And what I like to do is I like to outline first with that color the black line that I made. Now sometimes you will see, depending on the kind of marker you use, if you start to overlap this color on your black marker, it might bleed. So I would try to not touch it right on the black, because then your orange, I call it contaminated, it will get contaminated with that black and it doesn't look maybe as neat as you would want it to. So then you can go back over more gently, more slowly, and get those white areas that you didn't want. So if you have a Crayola magic marker, they tend to bleed really easily. I'm using a Sharpie. You would think that Sharpies don't bleed, but you'd be surprised. They do. So I'm going to outline my shape of where I'm going to use my orange first. Okay, and I have to turn my body because this paper is sticky and I don't want to move it too much either. So, and then now that I've done that, I can go ahead and kind of color it in. Now, a lot of people have different methods of how they like to color stuff in. I like to do a nice even up and down and just kind of go along the edges again. And I'm going to go ahead and grab my paper like I suggested and put it under my wrist, so I'm not going to be smearing any more of the color. And then you can rotate it with your hand. And I kind of like to hang on to it with my other hand, so I'm moving that as I'm moving my hand. And we'll fill this in, color it in. And the reason why I like to keep my lines kind of up and down is even when it dries, you can kind of still see the pattern of the markers. And sometimes if you're too sloppy and you're too quick, you can still see that and it doesn't look as aesthetically pleasing as maybe you were hoping for. So, as I do this, also it's all in the wrist. So I talk about this a lot with my boys that play sports. Art is a muscle movement. Art is a, how do you say it? You develop your skills in art the same way you do sports. The more you do it, it becomes a muscle memory and it's a habit, and it's not something you're born with. It's not a talent. It's definitely something you work on and you build. And so as you gain control over your movements in your pencil and in your markers, that's just developed over time. The more I practice art, the better I get at art. It's not a talent that you're born with. You can become a good artist if you try really hard and just keep practicing, just like a sport. So, I'm done with this little area, and I really like it. I would also suggest after this dries that I'm going to probably maybe go back over with my black marker and really make that line a little bit bolder. So now that I've done that, I'm going to move on. I have my smudge up here that's kind of bothering me, but I don't want to necessarily color this whole space in a dark color. So what I'm going to do is find a way to maybe cut this part off, and that way this area isn't so, it doesn't all have to be blue. I think I'm going to draw a little spiral right here and then go from here. So that's what's fun about this scribble art, is that it can change and morph as you continue to work. You can kind of see where it's going to go, what you want it to do, and again, like any mistakes you have, you can make part of the art, part of the process, you know. Doesn't have to be like a plan that you had at the beginning. Maybe you do have a vision, and that works too. So now that I've got this area sectioned off and I want to cover up where I smudged, I'm going to choose a darker color, like purple. Purple's a good dark color, and it also, I think, would look really good next to my orange. So I'm going to, again, outline. And now I can see that it's already covering up where I've smudged. So I'm fixing my mistake. I don't have to throw my artwork out or start all over. You know, so I'm just using the tools that I have to fix my mistake. So my failure becomes part of my success. That's a little plug of life philosophy in art for you. I really like this color. Probably going to use again. Again, I'm outlining around my black line, and I'm using my paper to prevent me from smudging. Another trick would have been that I probably should have traveled somewhere over there while this marker area dried, and then that way I wouldn't have wet, like my hand wouldn't be on top of the wet marker. So that's another trick of the trade if you are doing a watercolor. If you wanted to do watercolor for this, if you have watercolors at home, if you're going to do watercolor here, I would go to the other side of the paper while that watercolor dries. I like this color a lot. Okay, so now that I've done that, that's looking really nice. I'm going to keep filling these big spaces in with some nice colors. So some of the things that you can also do, instead of coloring things all the way in, is you can add texture. Adding texture is just with a marker is just different kind of line design. So there's different kinds of shading you can do. We talked about that last week. There's cross-hatching, hatching, stippling, and scribbling. And then I also kind of like adding little designs. So in my example, I took a marker and I just did little circles, different sizes of circles, and that's what I'm going to do inside my triangle. I'm going to take my scrap piece of paper that I'm using here to protect my artwork, and I'm just going to kind of do little dots inside my triangle at a variety of different areas, and then I can do bigger circles, and maybe I'll do like one huge circle right here, kind of covering up again my smudge. Again, I'm using the tools that I have to fix my mistakes. I'm not just getting mad. I'm not throwing away my artwork. So as I do that, it also gives this artwork variety, which is another principle of design. So I like where that's going. I'm probably going to go ahead, and what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to do dots on the other triangle, but in a different color. So I'm going to keep with the themes of the dots on this side, and I'm going to go ahead and just change the color up. If you were like me growing up and you doodled a lot while you were in your other classes, you guys should probably have no issue with doing this. If you're sitting in ELA and you've got the whole side of your notes is like covered in scribbles and doodles and whatnot, then this should be a very fun and easy and relaxing project for you to do. I'm going to go ahead and show you what I have done. If I can unstick it. So as you can see, I've got my nice bold colors. I've got some variety of texture that I'm adding here with the dots. And as I continue, I'm going to just see what else I need to add, if I need to, what else I would like to do in the shapes and in the bigger, bolder areas. So that's what I've got going on so far. Lay this back down. Another thing you can do is you can add a variety of different types of lines. So we did shapes inside of our shapes. Now we could probably do lines inside of the lines. I've picked out a nice blue. I'm going to do some blue. Maybe I'll do zigzags over here. And then I'm going to go maybe make a pattern inside here. So just some fun blue zigzags, and then I'll color them in. So that's where my pattern comes in. So I'll have blue, white, blue. So in an artwork like this, what I would tell my students is I don't want to see a lot of white area. You know, I want color. White can be used, but it shouldn't be a large part of it. It should just be another thing that's used in the composition. It shouldn't be the composition. There are a lot of artworks that are very simple and basic with white and black bold lines or white and black bold shapes. But for this one, I think color is best. I think it's fun, especially during this time when you're inside or if you're, you know, in one place for a long period of time. Having something nice and colorful to look at, I think would be fun. So I did some zigzags. I've also, in my coloring, have gone over my black lines. Like I said, I want to go ahead and kind of bolden up some of my lines. So I'm going to do that. Kind of go back over some lines that maybe I colored over. Again, I'm fixing my mistakes on my paper. I don't feel like I need to start all over. I'm not stressed out about it. Art is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be a challenge, and it's supposed to, you know, make you happy. Okay. Let's see. I've got this nice big red color I can use. That would cover up a lot of space. So I think I'm going to do that over here. Actually, no. let me think. Ooh, let's see. Maybe I will put it, because I've got a lot of warm colors happening. I've got orange. This is a purple. It would consider to be cool, but it's also fuchsia, so it's getting a nice warm vibe from it. So I would probably put another cool color here, but I also have cool colors right here. So what I would do is I'm going to keep working on this. I'm going to keep coloring in the bigger, bolder shapes with some nice bold colors, and I'm probably going to keep working on my littler shapes and putting like different designs inside. So that's what I would do, and I hope that your composition comes out successfully. Again, I would just keep in mind that your mistakes can be part of your artwork, and I wouldn't get too caught up in them not working. So this piece is great and fun. There's no right or wrong answer, and I hope you enjoyed this lesson as much as I did. Thank you for participating.
This is MyIPS on MyINDY-TV 23. Here's what's coming up next.
Hi, my name is Mrs. Hutchins. I am the visual arts teacher at Harshman Magnet Middle School, and I'm here to talk to you about another fun art lesson while you're at home. And it is the Mobile art lesson. It is day 10 of the Home Learning Fine Arts program. So I went ahead and found things that hopefully you could find around your house as well to make a mobile. So I found a wired hanger, and they're not hard to find. Hopefully you have one in the closet. Most of the time women don't like wired hangers for their clothes, so I don't think your mom's gonna miss this one. So grab a wire hanger. I grabbed some cardboard from some boxes. I'm sure there are some boxes lying around. I'm not necessarily sure if I'm gonna use them. I grabbed them. I also grabbed some white note cards. I don't know if this is a common thing that you probably have, but white paper would do, and then you could cut them up into smaller different shapes. So that's what we're going to be doing. We are going to be creating a mobile. So a mobile is something that hangs from your ceiling, or it can hang from the wall if you have a hook, but it is a piece of art that will hang, and it can just kind of flow, and it's kind of just an interesting sculpture piece that you can have in your house. So a common artist that pretty much everybody knows is Alexander Calder. He was a famous American sculptor. He did very many mobiles that also had their own base, so it would be something that hung and had a base as well, so it didn't necessarily hang from a ceiling. Some of the famous there's a museum, the Museum of Modern Art in Washington, D.C. has a huge Alexander Calder. In fact, I'm almost positive that either the building was built for that mobile but anyways, they put the mobile in the middle of the construction of the building. So it's there forever. What else you might need is some tape, some scissors, again with some markers, some pens. I didn't have string, but I grabbed some wire. So you can use string or yarn. If you have that around your house, I had wire. So hopefully my scissors can cut through my wire. I'm hoping that they do. I tested it a little. So if you don't have string or wire, maybe there's a pair of shoes that you don't wear anymore, that you don't foresee wearing, and you can take the shoelaces out of those and use them as well. So the first thing we're going to do is come up with some fun shapes that we would like to have hanging. You can come up with a theme of what you would like to have on your mobile. And I think I'm going to do stars and a moon. If you're going to do cardboard, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead and not use it right now because of my markers. I don't know how well my markers would cover the cardboard. But if you want to use cardboard and you have paint and you have access to paint, I would go ahead and paint your pieces of cardboard, spray paint, again, with your parents' permission. All of these things you need to be making sure and asking your parents if it's okay to use these supplies. I assume yes, but go ahead and make sure you ask. I don't want to get you in any trouble. Okay, I'm going to start by drawing. I think I'm going to do a moon. I'm going to do a crescent moon, and I would use a pencil if you want to, or I'm going to go ahead and use a marker. So I'm going to go ahead and do my half crescent moon. If you're not very confident with your circle drawing abilities, I would grab something that is round, big and round, like a bowl in the kitchen, and you can draw your circle using that. And if you want to do a crescent moon like I'm doing, you would just take the bowl, move it, or a smaller bowl, and you could draw the inside of the crescent moon as well. So let's see, I'm going to go ahead and draw this. I'm not very good at these, so we'll just see what we're going to get. Everybody's crescent moon is a little bit different, and mine ends up looking more like a banana, to be honest. But I'm going to go with it. So I went ahead and I drew my crescent moon. I'm going to go ahead and draw over, make my line a little bit bolder. And I'm going to cut this shape out. So first I've drawn it. I've determined what kind of material or medium I'm going to color it in with. I'm going to use markers. You can use crayons, colored pencils, or crayons, I should say, colored pencils, paint, watercolor, anything that you have access to at your home, or if you know a neighbor that you could borrow it from. Obviously, social distancing, pick it up from their porch. So there's my crescent moon. Like I said, not my favorite, but I love it anyway. Let's go for it. So I'm gonna pick yellow to color my moon in. Do I want yellow? Ooh, that's a good question. Yes, we'll go ahead and do yellow. So I'm doing up and down strokes, coloring it in, going this way. I kind of then like to outline. Everybody's got a different coloring technique. What I would just avoid is scribbling. I wouldn't do scribble coloring. You want kind of a nice color pattern, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. Because like the markers, you think they're going to dry evenly, and you're not going to see that kind of scribble scrabbling movement of your pen, and you will. And it just never looks as good as you would want it to. So go ahead and just try to make nice up and down movements when you color in. Sometimes if you really want to hide the marker movement, you can change the direction of your marker and do multiple layers, and that does kind of help blend your marker movement better. I'm going to continue outlining. Another idea, if you don't have paint and you really want to use cardboard, is I would cut this out and I would lay it on top of the cardboard, and I would cut the cardboard to match the shape of this. But then that might mean you'd have to do two sides. You would have to do two sides of paper on your cardboard, and that if you have time, I mean, we have a lot of time right now, so you could do that. So I'm going to continue to color this in. I'm going to continue to make my up and down marker movements, up and down, really nice and smooth. That way, when my marker dries, I'm not seeing these really kind of chaotic color marks. I'm also kind of overlapping as I do my coloring, and that way it again blends really nice. And I really don't like seeing any white. Like when I color, I want to keep everything very evenly colored. I don't like any white marks. It just looks sloppy. You have the time, take the time to do it right. I'm just kind of going over. So now I have my moon. Now I'm going to cut my moon out. So grab some scissors. and I will hold it up, and I like to cut. The way I like to cut is I like to cut a little bit on the outside of the line first, kind of just quick. Cut out the shape, and then I will go back and I will do my more final cutting. If you have an X-Acto knife at home, again, with the permission of your parents and maybe even the supervision, you can use an X-Acto knife to cut out your shapes and get that really nice clean cut. You want to make sure that you have something underneath your X-Acto knife when you're cutting, because it will mark up any table that you are cutting on. So I'm just going to go ahead and make my fine cuts. As I do this, I'm rotating the paper as I cut, keeping my wrist like straight. I'm not cutting like this. I'm rotating this to make this hand happy, because your wrist can get really tired when you're cutting. There's no point in doing that. Just rotate the paper as you cut. So, I'm gonna do this. It still looks like a banana to me. It's all right, it's a floating banana. And even though I still see white around my edges, what I can do is I can take my black marker and I can kind of color that in black so I don't see any white. So I'm just kind of gathering up my scraps. It's always important to keep your works area clean and organized, and I'm going to go ahead and put my scraps up here. I'm not throwing my scraps away yet, because you can always use your scraps potentially for something else, and it's just nice not to be incredibly wasteful. So I'm going to take my black marker, or drop it, and I'm going to go ahead and color in a little bit more just where I can see the white. And I went ahead and I put a paper underneath, so I'm not marking on my table. I'm not making a mess. And if you do make a little mess, that's okay, but it's also really important to not get too messy. You want to keep things clean and organized when you're working, and that way you know where everything is and you're being respectful of the people that you share a space with. You know, your parents, your brothers, your sisters, your aunts, your uncles, grandmas, grandpas, whomever. So now that I'm done with my moon, I'm going to go ahead and make a hole. This might be a little bit difficult because how do I want the moon to hang? Like that, or like this. I don't have a hole puncher, and you probably don't either. It's not a common thing you have around the house. So I'm going to fold my moon just a little bit. I'm going to take my scissors, and I'm just going to do a little X. Make sure I'm not going to cut completely. Or you can just do a little snip. One snip might be fine. One little snip right there. And then I'm going to just fold that little part back. I just folded it back like that. And then I'm going to take my wire, and I'm going to determine, I want my moon to kind of be higher. I want it to be higher up, and I want it to be in the middle. So I'm going to take the wire or string that you have gathered, and I'm going to kind of eyeball measure it out. Because I want enough wire or string to tie or wrap around my hanger, and then I want enough wire to tie or wrap around my moon. So I've measured about, what looks like about 3 inches for where I want it. Let me see where my scissors are. Let's see if they cut. Let's see. Yes, they do. Okay, good. It was pretty. You can use wire if you have it. Again, ask your parents. So what I'm going to do is, because I have wire, I'm just going to go ahead and wrap it. If you have string, you would tie it. But I'm going to wrap. Wrap, wrap, wrap. And then I'm going to place it down, and then I'm going to slide my wire into the little hole that I made. And then again, I probably should have done this. I should have done the moon first, because now I have to hold the whole thing up. So what you're going to do after you've looped up, for string, you're just going to tie. For wire, I'm going to wrap this around right there. And that's going to secure my moon. I'll hold it up when I'm done. I should have did this the other way around. So I'm going to wrap it around. So that's all I did, is I wrapped the wire around the wire. For the string, you're just going to tie a knot. So there's my moon. So we've got a great start. So now I'm going to do some stars. And I think because my moon is yellow, I'm going to do different colored stars to be different. So I brought the note cards because I thought maybe I could use them for smaller shapes. But if you just have paper, go ahead and use paper. And I'm just going to take another piece of paper out like so. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold my paper into fourths. And that's going to give me 4 squares that I can use to make stars. And when I rip or fold my paper, I take my fingernails and I kind of make that crease real nice and crisp. And that way when I rip, should make a nice clean tear. I like ripping. If that stresses you out, go ahead and please use scissors. If you want that clean rip, again, just use your fingernails to get that really nice crisp line. And should just rip right there. So I'm going to go ahead and rip 4s. I'm going to have 4 stars. I kind of was thinking I would do like 2 on this side and 2 on the other and then see where else I could go. Another great idea is if you have your stars is you could do stars like layered all the way down. So you could have a star up here and then keep going and attach wire to your star to the next star. So we could go and do something fun like that, and I'll show you. If I have time, we can get there if I can do this. Okay, people stress out about stars. I actually prefer that stars aren't perfect. I don't think that the stars need to be perfect. If you know anything about stars, they don't even really look like stars. So I wouldn't get too crazy and like making it really neat. You can do any kind of star you want, the 5-point star, 6-point star, a bajillion point star. I'm going to go ahead and just do a 5-point star because that's the most common star. And the only way that I do it is I just draw. Actually turned out really well. I start by drawing a triangle up here. I draw a triangle over here. And not a triangle, but kind of a point. And then I kind of let them meet. And I don't necessarily get freaked out if all of my areas aren't even or neat or nice. So I did my star. And then I'm going to pick a color. I think I'm going to go back to this fun purple color that I used in a different lesson. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to outline the lines first. And then I'm going to color it in. And then I'll probably go ahead and make my black line bolder, stronger, thicker, however you want to, whatever term you want to use. So the thing about the mobile, when you hang it up though, the thing you're going to have to keep in mind is if you are going to add the balance, the weight of it. You don't want too much weight over here because then your mobile is going to hang like this. So you want to make sure when we're designing this, as we're doing it, that there's going to have to be some sort of balance. Because it is paper, it might not be too big of a deal, but if you did use cardboard, it might get a little heavier. And you will definitely need to make sure that you're considering what weight is going where. So I colored this in, and I'm going to just really quick outline and make it bolder again. And then I'm going to cut it out, and I'm going to do the hole, and then I'm going to show you what I mean when I say we can stack the stars. And oh, look what I did. I smudged. I'm not following my rules. So on a different lesson, I showed my students how you can put a piece of paper down to prevent your hand from smudging. So go ahead, take a scrap piece of paper, put your hand over that paper, and that way it protects your artwork. I'm not too worried about the fact that I smudged on this one because we will be cutting the white part away. I really love this color. It's a nice color. Oh, one more side. So now that I've made my black line a little bolder, I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. And because this was curved and these are straight, I feel more confident in cutting right on the line. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to cut right on the line. Straight lines are obviously easier to cut because the scissors edges are straight. So I'm just going to cut. Again, I'm turning this paper, I'm turning this hand and not the scissors, the wrist with my scissors. And again, that's just making it easier on myself and not trying to like cut it all wonky. So I'm doing this, and because I made my lines a little bit thicker, it's going to be easier to cut, or it should be. That's the theory. And I'm going to do this. I'm almost done. If you don't like the star and moon theme, you could think of a different theme. You can do sun and clouds. That's a good theme. You could do organic shapes or geometric shapes if you would like. Just different kind of shapes. There's a bunch of different themes you could have for your mobile. You don't have to, or your mobile, you don't have to stick with the theme I'm doing. You can do any kind of theme you want. So again, I'm going to go ahead and put my scraps out of my workspace. I just kind of sweep them into my hand like that, place them over there. I've got my star. It's nice and bold. I'm going to go ahead and make another hole. So how I do that is I fold over. I make a nice little, well, let's see, I want maybe more at the tip. Or would it be easier? Let's see. So I'm going to fold it, cut. Then what I do is I go to the back, I flip it over, and I just fold that little cut down, that little piece down. So we're going to hang the star there. I'm going to grab another piece of wire. This time I'm going to do this part first. This is what I meant by I should have done. I'm going to slide my wire or my string through. I'm going to tie my knot. If you are using string, don't tie the knot too tight because it will rip the paper. I'm just going to wrap my wire around like this, and that way it secures it. So that's how I wrapped it. It was hard for me to show you because I had wrapped it around the hanger first. So now I'm going to wrap it around the hanger just like I did the moon. And I'm just kind of wrapping like a snake would coil, or a vine would wrap around a branch. Okay, so far, this is what I've got. Not too bad. Now, if you're really a stickler and you want to color both sides of your paper so your mobile can be seen from both sides, because as you can see, the back is not colored, but the front is. That's up to you. So what I'm going to show you now is how to stack the stars. So I'm going to do another star, and then I'm going to put it right, I'm going to attach it to the star that's already here. That's what I'm going to do. And I might go a little bit bigger of a star. So let's see. Again, I wouldn't get too caught up in the shape of your star. And I might actually do a multi-point star. And it's going to look, you know, interesting, and that's okay, and doesn't have to be perfect. So I did a multi-point star. Kind of looks like interesting. But if you see stars, they look more like balls of gas, actually, because that's what they are. But anyways, so we'll do that. I'm not actually in love with this, so I'm going to put it aside. I'm going to just go back to my basic star, but maybe bigger. But if you liked it, I'd go for it. So back to a basic 5-point star, except I did it a wee bit bigger. There. And again, it's not perfect. It's okay. And let's see. All right, so now I'm going to pick a different color. I think I'm going to go with this green. I'm going to color that in. I'm just going ahead and making my lines bold right now since I have my black marker out. You don't necessarily have to outline your things with black marker if you don't have a black marker, or if you just have a pencil. That's totally fine. You can just have your stars be the color. I like to have black outlines sometimes. I think it makes things pop. So I'm almost done outlining this, and then we will get coloring. So there we go. Put the supplies up. Color this in. Again, it's really, I know it just seems like coloring seems so elementary, but it does make a difference on how you color. It does impact your artwork, how neat it is if you color in nice and neat. Again, it's an up and down, kind of filling in that area. I outline first, and then I color, outline my area, and then I color. Again, be careful with the markers or the colors that you're using, and make sure that they're not, when you do outline, if you get too close, it might bleed. That black color might feed into your color, and then it just doesn't look as neat. So just be careful when you do that. So I've got my second star made, and now I'm going to cut it out. Again, pretty confident that I can cut these straight lines, so I'm just going to go for it. I turn the paper, knot my wrist, and then get this cut out. Put my scraps down. It's really important that you get in the habit of just keeping your workspace clean. If you have a desk or a space at home to do your homework, this would be a great place to do your artwork too, and just keep everything organized and clean, and that way it's just not a chaotic space. I know for me, it's really hard for me to feel creative or feel productive if my space is not clean. I can't concentrate, I can't focus on what I'm doing if I just get stressed out about the things that I need to do in the messy space. So I like to keep my workspace clean and neat. All right, so now that I've cut my second star out, I'm gonna move my scraps over here to my scrap pile, and then I'm gonna determine how I want my star to hang. I think I want it to hang a little lower, and I think I want it to hang from this tip right here. So I'm gonna cut right here. Again, ooh, that was deep. Be careful, I almost cut it too much. So if that happens, if you do cut it too much, you have tape, and if you do have tape, it would be smart to maybe, it's too big of a piece of tape, to reinforce that area with a little tape. If your tape is clear, that's all right, because then you can just fold it over and, you know, you won't really see it. You kind of see it, but not really. And so now that I've covered up my hole with tape, I'm going to just have to recut a little bit. But that's okay. Now that hole is reinforced and it shouldn't break. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and finish up. With this, I'm going to measure the wire, the length of the wire, and determine where I would want to put that. The next thing I would need to do is I would need to cut another hole here to hang my star down here. So I think I would probably drop it a little bit down there, and then I would do a couple more stars over here. So that would be the mobility lesson for day 10. Again, you can do any theme you want. You can do any kind of shapes or any kind of material you want. It's whatever you can find around the house. And I hope you enjoyed this art lesson as much as I did. Thank you for joining me today.
You've been watching MyIPS on MyINDY-TV 23, a free educational service provided by Circle City Broadcasting of Indianapolis. MyIPS airs weekday mornings from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. For more information, special announcements, and the weekly program schedule, go to wishtv.com. You can also follow us on Facebook.